Hey, it's Penny here. Last week I did the Buzzword Readathon. I did a vlog if you want to watch that, but I thought today I would just do like a quick wrap up of the different books that I read during the week. Some of them didn't really fit with the prompts, but I will just do a quick wrap up of what they're about and what I thought about them. I will leave all the links to the Buzzword Readathon down below if you are interested in finding out more about it. High level, the point of the Buzzword Readathon was to read books with the words what, when, who, how. Why can I never, when, who, what, where, why, how, all of those words. I can never remember all of them in one go, but I did just that time, so very good. So the first book that I read that actually fit with the prompt was this book, which is What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted by Duff. So this is the sequel to Once Were Warriors, which was this classic New Zealand film. I highly recommend it, even though it can be very difficult to watch, and it was very difficult to read because it is all about domestic violence and rape and people in poverty who are really struggling, and there's a lot of alcohol and gangs and just a lot of really horrible stuff that leads to other horrible stuff. It's just a horrible book. This is a horrible book, but with important messages, to be clear. This book is the same, although I felt like the messages were less clear. This follows the father of the family from the first book, and it's sort of his redemption arc, but what I was quite disappointed with is that he wasn't in this book hardly at all, and the actual redemption was left till quite late. I would have liked to see Jake spending a lot more time with his family, but for the most part they were quite separate. Also, I should mention that both this book and the last book have this very odd writing style that I think is supposed to be more like its train of thought, and because it's these people in poverty who are quite uneducated, it's very rough writing. It's very difficult to read, and it took me a long time to get through this because of that. I will also say in the first book, a lot of the women in the family stories were told, whereas this book, I felt like the women that were included in here were mainly included to forward the men's plots. Even though some of the women had much more interesting stories, I wish that Tanya, one of the women in here, she has an amazingly interesting story, and some really horrible stuff happens to her, but it's all kind of sidelined and from other people's perspectives, and I thought that was a bit disappointing as well. So I did give the first book 3 stars because I balanced it out between 2 stars for the writing and enjoyment and 4 stars for the message, so I gave it 3 stars, but this one just got a 2 stars. I do still think it has some important messages about connectedness and community being a way that people can get out of shitty situations, and that if your community is just everybody in these downward spirals, then how are you going to get out of it? So overall, disappointing. So the second book that I read, and in fact the final book that I read that fit with the prompts without cheating, was What Happened That Night by Sandra. This is a story about a woman who a year ago was gang raped while she was drunk. She then tried to kill herself, has had a really awful time. A year later, a video of the rape comes out, and she decides to get revenge on the different people who were involved. So there were some aspects of the story that I thought were done really well. I won't say that I enjoyed them because this was a heavy topic, so it wasn't exactly enjoyable, although there was a romance weaved in that I thought added some lighter moments to the heavy topic. And also the romance was with a guy who had Asperger's, and I thought it did quite a good job of showing that people with mental health issues can still be real people. I also thought it did a really good job of looking at the impacts of date rape on a person, even if they were drunk at the time, like looking at the fact that that doesn't really make a difference. But there were also a few things about the story that disappointed me. I didn't really like, and this is somewhat a spoiler, so if you care, skip ahead, but it did make out the gay guy in the end to be a bit of a villain. I also thought the revenge plots were very unrealistic, and also, even though I understand why she didn't go to the cops, I was still really frustrated when she didn't, when it was so obviously a situation where you should, even if you don't trust them much. So as far as thrillers go, I thought this was an okay one, but certainly not perfect. Now, let's start getting into the books where I was cheating to fit them into the readathon. The next one I'll talk about would be Dry by Neal Schusterman and Jarrod Schusterman, which is Neal Schusterman's son, I think. The reason why I put this in is it does say, what will you do when the taps run dry? And that's a summary of what the story is about. It basically follows these group of teens after the water in their, I think actually their whole state, runs out and there's just no water anymore. It's a possibly realistic situation that might happen. That said, I will say that the particular characters we followed I thought had quite an extreme adventure, and of course it's a novel, so that's not surprising, but I would have liked to see something a little bit more realistic. There were these snapshots, little bits in between the chapters of other random characters who were having more, I think, normal adventures, and I found those much more engaging. Although I think part of that was that the characters in the snapshot were very focused on surviving and being good people, whereas the characters that we followed were all focused on the power dynamics within the group and being the leader, especially once the later characters were included. So what this book did is kind of throughout the book more characters are added to the group, and so you start following their perspectives. One of them is added very far into the book, and I think once the character Jackie was added in, it just started this weird power stuff, and it frustrated me because I just wanted them to focus on survival, which is actually the important thing here. And I just don't particularly like people that get all wrapped up in power as opposed to purpose, which is survival in this case. So ultimately that meant I wasn't particularly engaged. When some really emotional stuff happened, I didn't care about the characters, so I didn't care as much as I should have. But as I said in my blog, I did go out after I read this and buy myself some emergency water, so obviously this did have an impact on me. I do think it's definitely worth reading, but please don't be like these characters. So the next book that I'll talk about would be The Apocalypse of Elena Mendoza. So I listened to this on audiobook. There's none of the buzzwords in this title. My only argument is that I heard about this book through the host, Books and Lala, so it sort of fits. This book follows a teenage girl who was born from a virgin birth, has always had voices or inanimate objects that talk to her, and now she's discovered that she can heal people, and the voices are trying to tell her what she should do with that power. So normally I wouldn't like a book set in high school that has significant amounts of romance in it. That's just not generally what I like. But I did really like this one. And I think that just comes down to the fact that there were some really interesting characters and some really strong themes that I appreciated. There was this theme of friendship, and it investigated some different friendship dynamics. It looked into the boundaries of control, so what you can control versus what you can't control and how that impacts you. And I guess why the romance was acceptable to me, or at least not annoying to me, was because it really emphasized the idea that you should get to know people and fall in love with the actual person rather than just the idea of a person. And of course the supernatural element where she's able to talk to these inanimate objects and heal people, I thought was really interesting. So in the end I really enjoyed it, which I was sort of surprised by, but I don't know why. Okay, so then the last book that I'm going to talk about was actually the first book I read because it happened to turn up in my mailbox on the first day of the readathon, so it only fits in the readathon because it arrived in the readathon, and that is The Steel Prince by V.E. Schwab, which is part of the Shades of Magic series. V.E. Schwab started putting out this comic series, which is a prequel following the main character Cal from the Shades of Magic series. His father is the main character in this book. So this book is set when his father is a lot younger. He's the prince instead. He has been sent off to this criminal port town, basically like, go and experience some real world and grow up. Stop being such a stupid little shit. So I did really enjoy being back in this world. I always love V.E. Schwab's characters and her magic systems. Unfortunately, in this comic book, I did feel like it wasn't that clear how some of the magic was working. Like, our main character has steel magic, and I still don't even really know what that is. It probably was explained in the original books, but I can't remember. And the pictures of it are just like, I don't even know what's happening. So it was a shame, although there is also a character with bone magic in this story, and I really loved the way that that was drawn. So half and half. Also, I thought there were some scenes where the characters were drawn so like vaguely that you couldn't even tell who it was. I can't find an example, but just there were definitely scenes where you were like, who is that? What's happening? Which was a little bit unfortunate. I do think that once a few of these are out, I will reread the whole lot, just because I feel like this kind of comic or graphic novel series is better to read like in a big lot, because it's just so short, you barely get into it and then it's finished. I do think my favorite character of the series is going to be the Pirate Queen with the bone magic, because that's just a cool concept. Yes, hopefully the series will get a little bit better as it goes. But I did still really enjoy it. So overall, it was 5 books read in the week. Some of them were pretty short. Some of them didn't fit with the prompts. But I still think it was a good reading week. If you're watching this and you did the Buzzword Readathon, let me know how it went for you. Or if you've read any of the books that I talked about today, I would love to talk to you about them down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.